You survived it. The darkness that once wrapped itself around you like a second skin. The pain, the rage, the shame. You faced it. You didn't run. You didn't deny it. You stood in front of the mirror when every bone in your body told you to look away. You entered the storm and made it through, not untouched, but transformed. So why does it feel like nothing? Where is the relief? Where is the clarity you were promised after doing the hard work? You expected fireworks. You expected lightness. But what you got was stillness. Cold, unfamiliar stillness. Not the peaceful kind, but the eerie quiet after a long battle. The kind that makes you wonder if you've simply lost all feeling instead of healed. This is the strange truth about surviving your shadow. It doesn't end with triumph. It begins with confusion. For so long, pain was your compass. Trauma shaped how you moved through the world. You walked on edge, hyper-aware of every glance, every tone, every silence. You built your identity not just despite the suffering, but around it. The anxious achiever, the over-functioning caregiver, the emotional detective who always needed to figure it out. But now that the shadows are behind you, now that you've unhooked from old cycles, there's nothing left to fight. And that is terrifying. Because if you're not the one who's always surviving, who are you? No one warns you that healing comes with an identity crisis. No one tells you that letting go of pain also means letting go of the roles you played to manage that pain. The fixer, the pleaser, the strong one, the one who never cried, the one who always knew the answer. Now, without your armor, without your roles, you feel exposed. The silence around you isn't peace, it's disorientation. And for many, it feels worse than the suffering they left behind. Because chaos had clarity. Hurt had momentum. Pain gave you something to do. But healing asks you to be still, to rest, to allow joy without suspicion, to sit in softness without tensing for impact. And your nervous system doesn't know how to do that. You start to notice it in the small things. You get restless when everything is calm. You overthink when someone's kind to you. You stir up conflict when a moment feels too tender. Not because you're broken, but because your body, your brain, your patterns were all trained for survival, not ease. And so even when life becomes safe, you flinch. You scan for danger that's no longer there. You hear echoes of old wounds and new silence. This is the paradox of healing no one talks about. When the war ends, peace feels unnatural. Your mind searches for its old enemies. Your body expects to be hit. You don't trust the calm because you never knew life without noise. And this is where many people falter. They confuse emptiness for failure. They think healing isn't working because they don't feel joy right away. But in truth, this space, the quiet, uncertain space between identities, is the most sacred part of the journey. It's the cocoon, the phase where the old self dissolves and the new self has yet to fully emerge. It's not pretty. It's not poetic. It's awkward and slow. It's moments of staring at the ceiling and wondering if you've lost yourself. But really, you're shedding skins that were never truly yours. The grief that bubbles up now isn't about the trauma. It's about losing the version of yourself that kept you alive through it. The part of you that never rested. The part that scanned every room. The part that thought love had to be earned through perfection or control. You honor them not by resurrecting their habits, but by letting them rest, by building a life where they are no longer needed. So if you feel numb right now, that's okay. If you feel lost without your wounds, that's normal. If the silence feels unbearable, stay with it, because beneath that silence, a new voice is forming. It's quieter than the voice of survival. It doesn't scream like trauma. It doesn't panic like fear. It whispers gently. It says, "We're safe now. We don't have to run." And this voice, it belongs to you, not the you who had to fight for love, not the you who overfunctioned to stay included, but the you who simply exists, the you who is learning that safety isn't boring, it's beautiful, that softness isn't weakness, it's power, that healing isn't a goal, it's a way of living. So if you're floating right now, unanchored in the space after the storm, don't rush to find the shore. Let the stillness hold you. Let the quiet rewire you. This is where you begin again. Healing doesn't just ask you to let go of your wounds. It demands that you rethink what you once called normal. Because here's the quiet secret most people don't realize. Once you survive your shadow, you don't return to who you used to be. You can't. That version of you was shaped by fear, molded by adaptation, trained to predict danger and avoid loss. Returning to that would be like trying to fit into a house that already burned down. But what comes next isn't as easy as it sounds. You'd think, after years of carrying trauma like a second heartbeat, the absence of pain would feel like freedom. Instead, it often feels like absence, like something is missing. And that something is you. Or at least, the version of you that knew how to survive in dysfunction. You begin to realize how many of your habits were born from self-protection. The way you anticipated rejection before it came. The way you stayed busy to avoid sitting with yourself. The way you kept people at arm's length, just close enough to not feel alone, but far enough that they couldn't hurt you. Without these strategies, you feel vulnerable, stripped bare, and your body, once accustomed to crisis, doesn't know what to do with calm. So it invents storms, not out of malice, but out of muscle memory. Maybe you pick a fight with your partner over nothing. Maybe you ghost someone who showed you genuine care. Maybe you suddenly feel the urge to quit your job, even though things are finally going well. These aren't flaws. They're echoes. Echoes of an identity that was built not on joy, but on hypervigilance. An identity that never believed peace could last, and so sabotaged it before it could be taken away. This is the phase where you become aware of your own resistance to joy. And that's where the real work begins. Not in the crisis, not in the trauma, but in the boring, beautiful business of living without drama. Because peace is not passive. It's active. It asks you to stay in the room when your instincts scream, run.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Your feedback means a lot, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts.
It asks you to receive love without performing for it. It asks you to rest, not because you earned it, but because you deserve it. And that's hard, because many of us were taught that value is transactional, that worth must be proven, that good things come with a cost. So when ease arrives, we instinctively look for the catch. But what if there is no catch? What if the discomfort you feel isn't a warning, but a withdrawal from adrenaline, from cortisol, from years of living in a body that only knew chaos as home? Your nervous system isn't betraying you. It's just recalibrating. It's learning, moment by moment, that the danger is over. But that learning takes time. You might still jump when the phone rings. You might still interpret kindness as manipulation. You might still find it hard to trust moments of silence, assuming they'll be filled with rejection or abandonment. That's okay. You're not doing healing wrong. You're just meeting your nervous system where it is, not where you wish it were. And that meeting, that's where compassion starts. You begin to soothe yourself, not with logic, but with presence. Not with perfection, but with patience. You learn to hold your own hand when fear arises, not silence it or shove it away. You learn to say, of course I'm scared. Of course I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. But maybe, just maybe, it won't. And slowly, the grip loosens. You stop rushing to fix every discomfort. You stop narrating your worth based on what you produce or how others respond. You stop scanning every room for a threat. And in that pause, in that breath, you begin to taste freedom. Not the loud kind, not the movie-worthy kind, but the quiet kind. The kind where you wake up and realize your body doesn't hurt as much. The kind where you answer a text without overthinking. The kind where you look in the mirror and no longer flinch. This is what post-shadow life looks like. Not perfect, but possible. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering the version of you that existed before the world convinced you to shrink. It's about trusting that this ease isn't a trap, that you don't have to earn the right to excel. That peace doesn't mean you've lost your edge. It means you've stopped bleeding just to feel alive. Here's the quiet shock of healing. You begin to realize that many of your relationships were built on who you were when you were hurting. They loved the version of you that over-delivered, apologized too often, and never asked for much. The one who laughed through discomfort, offered help before it was needed, and never dared to be a burden. But now that you're healing, now that you've stopped proving and started pausing, some of those relationships begin to shift, or break, And it's disorienting, because you thought healing would bring people closer. Instead, it sometimes highlights how much you were loved for your compliance, not your wholeness. You start to notice it in the small ways. When you say no, and they say you've changed. When you stop fixing, and they grow distant. When you speak your truth, and the room goes quiet. At first, you doubt yourself. You wonder if you're becoming cold, arrogant, selfish. But slowly, you begin to see it clearly. They were never responding to your essence. They were responding to your sacrifices, to your silence, to your suppression of need. And now that you've retrieved those parts of yourself, their reflection of you becomes distorted. This is the grief no one warns you about. The grief of outgrowing what you once settled for. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't mean you're too much. It just means the dynamic was built on imbalance and your healing tilted the scale. And yes, that's lonely, because when your identity shifts, your ecosystem shifts with it. Suddenly, the people you once felt safe around don't feel safe around your authenticity. Suddenly, your boundaries seem like barriers to them. Suddenly, your peace is mistaken for distance. But here's the truth. It's not your job to stay small to preserve other people's comfort. It's not your job to dilute your truth so others can swallow it more easily. You didn't do all this work just to remain palatable. You did it to be whole. And wholeness comes with changes. You start craving different conversations, ones with depth, curiosity, and nuance. You want connection, not performance. Truth, not transaction. Stillness, not surveillance. And that craving, it's holy. It's the soul finally demanding what it always deserved. So when people fall away after your healing, don't chase them. Don't shrink to fit their expectations. Instead, grieve with grace. Thank the past for what it gave you, and keep walking, because soon you'll begin to meet others who speak this new language. People who don't flinch at your boundaries, who don't mistake stillness for disinterest, who see your healing not as a threat, but as an invitation. And in their presence, you'll feel what it's like to be mirrored, not for your wounds, but for your wisdom. But here's the challenge. These people won't appear until you make space for them, which means letting go of patterns, of identities, of dynamics that no longer match the frequency of who you're becoming. And letting go is hard because those patterns weren't just pain. They were protection. They helped you feel needed. They gave you a role. They made the chaos make sense. But now that you're no longer living in survival mode, those roles feel heavy. They chafe against your growth. They drain your energy. This is the phase where you begin to prune, not from anger, not from bitterness, but from clarity. You stop explaining your healing to people who are committed to misunderstanding it. You stop arguing for your boundaries. You stop shrinking just to be liked. And instead, you choose congruence, alignment. You let your inner world lead, even when your outer world doesn't understand. And that's when the real healing starts, not just in your mind, but in your environment, in your relationships, in the spaces you allow yourself to occupy. You begin to surround yourself with people who honor your rest, who celebrate your no, who don't need your suffering to feel superior. And with time, you realize something revolutionary. You never needed to be more likable. You needed to be more loyal to yourself. There comes a moment in every healing journey where the silence gets loud, not the silence of rejection or abandonment, but the kind that follows when there's no longer a fire to put out, when the chaos that used to surround your life has faded, and the drama you once mistook for connection has gone quiet. And that stillness, it's uncomfortable, because you spent so long reacting to life. You're now faced with a question that terrifies the old version of you. What do I choose now? No more crises to solve, no more roles to perform, just a vast space of possibility. And in that space, the truth echoes back. Healing doesn't just remove your pain, it removes your excuses. You can no longer blame your past for why you avoid joy. You can no longer point to your wounds as the reason you settle. You are free now, and that's terrifying. Because freedom means responsibility. It means claiming your desires without apology. It means daring to dream a life that doesn't revolve around managing someone else's chaos or walking on emotional eggshells. But you don't need to fill that silence right away. You can sit with it, learn from it, let it show you what you actually want, Not what you were trained to want, not what gets you approval, applause, or safety, but what truly makes your heart feel awake. This part of healing doesn't come with dramatic breakthroughs. It comes in micro movements, subtle shifts. You catch yourself not people-pleasing. You notice when your body relaxes instead of tensing. You stop over-explaining your worth. You make a new choice, not because you're trying to prove something, but because it aligns with peace. And it's in these small choices that your new life begins to take shape. You start to rebuild, not in reaction to pain, but in partnership with your values. Not from a place of fear, but from grounded knowing. Not chasing what you lacked, but cultivating what sustains. It's slow, it's quiet, and yet it's powerful. Because suddenly, you're not the same person who began this journey. The you who once fought to be seen now chooses to see yourself. The you who once tolerated toxicity now honors your limits. The you who once clung to chaos now protects your peace. And that peace becomes your new baseline, not as a goal, but as a practice. Because peace isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a rhythm you build. It's the way you say yes to rest, the way you speak with honesty, the way you allow joy without guilt. And yes, you'll still get triggered. You'll still have moments of doubt, of fear, of sadness, but those moments no longer define you. They move through you without anchoring in shame. You no longer build homes in your suffering. You let the storm pass without moving back in. That's the gift of integrating your shadow, not just surviving it, but transforming because of it. You learn that wholeness is not the absence of pain. It's the presence of acceptance, of agency, of choice. You are not broken for feeling lost. You are brave for continuing the search. You are not failing because peace feels foreign. You are healing because you notice. And perhaps most importantly, you realize this. You were never too much. You were simply too aware for a world that wasn't ready for your depth. Now, you don't apologize for that depth. You honor it. You tend to it. You trust it. And when someone finally meets you there, not out of need, but resonance, it won't feel like a rescue. It'll feel like a return, because you've already come home to yourself.